world's newest state, South Sudan, has been added as the 6th member of the East African Community Trade Bloc. That is one of many resolutions that were reached at the end of the 17th Ordinary Summit of the EAC Heads of State Summit. Let's now bring in former Assistant Minister of Foreign Affairs here in Kenya, Richard Onyonka, who is an expert on East African affairs. So if you can hear me, the addition of South Sudan as the 6th member of the EAC, was that long overdue?
I think for me, the coming in of or the maturing of South Sudan to become a member of the East African Community has been long overdue. But again, you know that they've been having challenges in terms of their governance and the civil war. But again, I think the fact that Riek Machar has just agreed to go back to Juba, even when many of us actually believed that there wouldn't be a settlement on the South Sudan issue. I think this is a time that East Africa and indeed Kenya, I think President Uhuru Kenyatta, who initially started negotiating and discussing with the different factions within SPLM, SPLA, and many of the South Sudanese who are disagreeing with President Salva Kiir, President Uhuru came in and discussed with them, and indeed President Moi, retired, also did the same. I think former Prime Minister Raila Odinga has also been doing something about it. I think to a large extent, it's actually good news for the people of South Sudan, because once they join the East African Community, then the dividends would obviously be obvious.
So, of course, that peace deal has hit a few snags here and there, and it is in the process of, there's still conflict, there's still a humanitarian crisis in South Sudan. What role will the East African community play in trying to bring, peace in South Sudan?
The role of the East African community, if you are a member of the East African community, you have to be a signatory to the East African Charter on good governance, security, trade, and all the 7 issues that have been critical in making sure that the East African community becomes a solid economic bloc. The reality is that I think the leaders of East Africa must accept that they have to start asking fellow leaders within the region to accept the basic tenets of good governance, fairness, equity, justice, and therefore that then will deliberately mean the people of South Sudan will be accepted within the region, and they will be seen as democrats, as people who are not going to be warmongering, and people who are going to accept that democracy must grow in South Sudan, that they must decide deliberately that the two communities that have been warring will have to agree that they are going to take care of their country and not assume that somebody else will be interfering in their domestic and internal issues, which has been the case so far.
When you talk about, the member states being able to ask questions of each other, what comes to your mind when you think about Uganda and just concluded elections, which have been marred by a lot of questions, and the fact that the EAC Heads of State Summit is seen as a club, an exclusive club, and Yoweri Museveni, the Ugandan president, is like, their big brother. Do you think we can ever come to that a time when the various presidents can ask hard questions of each other in matters governance?
To be honest with you, the summit that is going to take place in Arusha, the truth is the East African presidents are going to sit. They are going to discuss, yes, the issue of the common market within East Africa is the agenda. But the truth and the reality is that there are many issues they're going to discuss. Number one, I believe the Ugandan question is going to come in. Of course, President Museveni has won the elections, but the truth and the reality is that there's a lot of discontent within Uganda. The question is, what is going to happen in Uganda? Is there a possibility, for example, that President Museveni would create a government of national unity to make sure that the Ugandan people feel that he's being inclusive and is not going to be divisive to make sure that his country collapses? The reality and the truth is that Ugandans are divided in the middle. You have the issue of Burundi. I am happy that President Nkurunziza has given an olive branch to the opposition. I believe Nkurunziza is serving his last term. I believe that the issues which are outstanding on both sides can be negotiated and can be agreed on. And I believe that these are matters that will be discussed within the framework of the East African Community Summit. The other issue that I think that we need to mention here also is that for the first time, the president-elect of Tanzania, Magufuli, will be in the summit, and most probably, given his style and his way of playing his politics, he might actually tell his brothers within the region that some of the issues which are conflict-based, which are going to create an environment of discontent within the region, can be sorted out diplomatically, can be sorted out, there has to be an engagement of fairness in our democratic process and our democratic growth. I believe those are the major issues that are going to come in. Of course, I believe President Uhuru will be discussing the issue of Somalia, Kenya's engagement and involvement. As you're aware, this is a regional conflict, and sincerely, I think that that is a matter that he will have to put on the table to ask his co-presidents within the region to give him support.
Mheshimiwa, the EAC has appointed former Tanzanian President Benjamin Mkapa to spearhead the mediation talks in the Burundi crisis. Yes. What's your take on this? What impact do you think this will have in efforts to find, a lasting solution in Burundi?
To a large extent, I think President Mkapa is highly respected in Tanzania. He served as a two-term president in Tanzania. He's a man who has been humble. He's been very meek. He was there with President Nyerere before President Nyerere died. If many Kenyans may not know that President Nyerere negotiated what is called the Arusha Accord, and within that accord is exactly how Burundi got itself out of war and civil war, but at the same time, many people believe that that accord is actually what has made Burundi constantly get into a conflict situation. I believe that the issues that are in Burundi can be negotiated. The issue is very simple. The people of Burundi and Rwanda are not very exact and precise the way we are in Kenya. The truth is, Burundi's question is about two communities. One is 20% of the total population, the other one is 80%. How do you accommodate these two communities without creating conflict and making sure that these communities feel that the governments which are going to be formed within their countries are actually going to be all-inclusive, and they're going to be democratic, and they're going to be acceptable to both the communities. I believe Mkapa is up to the challenge, and I think he will be able to do that.